Hey there, and welcome to Business Over Cocktails. I'm Lauren Najar, your host and hype woman, bringing you real talk about entrepreneurship. This is the podcast where we dive into the bold whys, the messy middles, and the game-changing aha moments that lead to success. You'll hear unfiltered stories from entrepreneurs, plus bite-sized solo episodes inside the Business Chaser series, where we cut through the noise and get straight to what actually drives sales, visibility, and growth. So whether you're here to get fired up or finally feel seen in your business journey, pull up a seat, pour your favorite drink, and let's have a real conversation. Thank you everyone for coming back to Business Over Cocktails. I am so excited. We have Lucy Bedewi here. She is a messaging strategist and a copywriter and the founder of My Right Hand Woman. I'm so excited to get to know you more. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
So I would love to know, okay, so if someone were to go to your website right now, there's like a huge story like that's just like on
Huge
your
story.
website about being fired and writing a manifesto to the company as to why they would never be profitable. Obviously, people can read about that story, but take us through, like, first of all, that's such a cool story to open up with on your website. Like, that was really cool when I was reading it. But tell us, like, where does that come from? How did that even come about? Just walk us through that.
Yeah, so I had just graduated from college, and there was like this tiny sliver of me that wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I also had this belief that I can't have a blank resume and just go straight into entrepreneurship. So I was like, let me try and get a remote job. So I applied for this remote job and I got it and I was excited. And it was my first job. And very quickly, I realized it was not my place. I was not being put in positions to succeed. I was being given these horrible progress reports every single week. And I just felt like the biggest failure of all time. So one day I kind of snapped. If anyone's seen that show, I didn't kill my husband, but I did write a 7-page manifesto and put it on the CEO's desk on a Friday, and basically said why the company would never work. And I listed out all these reasons in their messaging and their inconsistency in their branding and their operations. Like, it was very passive aggressive, but I have to say, if anyone read it, which no one's going to read it because I'm never going to publish it, you would see that it's actually helpful too. So I wrote this document and was promptly fired on, I think, Monday morning, which makes sense. And then from there, I just went downstairs. It was in the pandemic. I sat on my mom's couch and was like, I don't really know what to do from here. And we just talked about it. And she basically looked at me and she's like, you'll figure it out. And then a couple days later, I started looking at Facebook groups and thinking, like, what do people need? Like, I could be a social media manager. I post on my Instagram and know how to use Lightroom. Like, I can do that. I realize I don't like social media that much, nor do I want to edit people's pictures forever. So wedding photographers, I don't know how you do it. And then I came across the word copywriter and I thought to myself, I'm like, I could do that. In college, I was a food writer for 5 years. I was a published author by the time I was 8. Well, not author, but it was short stories. I wrote a short horror story, if anyone's curious. And then I just had one of those movie moments where like the montage is playing in your head and you're like, wait, I could be a writer. I wrote copy for 5 people. I did it for free. And I got such glowing testimonials from doing this work that it just kind of solidified, like, okay, I think this is the path. I think I can do this. So I was a freelance copywriter for a little bit. And then as I started to gain popularity, selling people into my copywriting services from a single Google Doc that I would just drop in Facebook groups whenever someone was like looking for a copywriter. And then I established my brand, I scaled my business, and now I'm the My Right Hand Woman that you see today.
That's so cool. It's such a cool story to like kick off with, but also like to include on your website, and just how like proudly you share that as part of your brand story too, which is so unique. So I guess like I would have assumed that you were at a business or working a 9 to 5 or day job as a copywriter. So what were you doing before?
For that job, I was working part-time remote as a community manager. And then prior to that, I have my major in marketing and I worked at American Eagle as a stylist. And they always joked, they were like, you are the worst folder we've ever hired. Like, thank goodness you can sell, because I was abysmal. Like, the store would look worse when I would work, not better.
That's so interesting. So it's so funny with those stores. American Eagle was never quite like this, but I grew up in the time where, like, Abercrombie and Hollister were at
Yeah.
its peak, and you would walk by and just like be engulfed with their cologne. But I joke all the time because my brother-in-law, and he wasn't my brother-in-law then, but my now brother-in-law and one of his really good friends, they worked, I think, at Hollister. And we always joke around because they were only sent to the stock room. They weren't like on the floor as
No.
models. Like, so like now I think like the Abercrombie and Fitch documentary came out a couple years ago talking about like the toxic work
Hmm.
culture, things like
Yeah.
that. And so like all they had to do was actually fold clothes in the back. Like that was their job. Because they weren't, pretty enough or whatever to be on the floor. So I thought that was funny to share. But it's so interesting that so you went from like American Eagle, then you went to like the community management position. You have a degree in marketing. Do you think that marketing has influenced then this copywriting like path?
Oh, absolutely. I think like there's a part of me that's thinking, well, why did I stress so much in school? It literally didn't matter. No one's seen my transcripts. The 4.0 means nothing. Cool. But at the same time, I'm really fortunate to have had traditional education because looking back, I think it gave me so many resources and so much language that allowed me to like propel myself further faster. My dad, he really wanted me to be an engineer. And if anyone's seen me do math, you would know that it's probably for the best of all of our roads and bridges that I'm not building them because my compromise with him was I'm going to be a business major, even though I wanted to do something in sociology or psychology. But in the end, I'm really thankful that I took that path. I think it really helped me. And I also was on an entrepreneurship track where I actually ended up getting like a little bit of funding for a fashion styling idea I had in college. So it gave me like that little taste of what life could be like if I decide to never have a boss again.
I love that too, where so I resonate a lot with that because I went to school and I have a degree in finance. I, of course, am not doing that now to a degree, right? I think, with a business degree, with finance, I still had to take marketing courses. And being a business coach, yes, you have to have an idea of finance and money, management, things like that. But I love what you said about like, yeah, like getting hung up in school and no one sees your transcripts. Like no one has ever asked me for my degree, especially as an entrepreneur, right? But
Yeah, I'm like,
it's
please ask me. I'm really qualified.
right, right. It's not even anything that you like put out there. It's like, I have a degree in this and I'm qualified more than this coach or this coach. It's like, we don't even do that. So you mentioned at the beginning too that you had some semblance of wanting to be an entrepreneur. What were like your earliest memories of that?
I was a very entrepreneurial child. I'm sure a lot of us can relate. Like, I thought it was so fun when our school was having some sort of bake sale or chocolate bar sale. I was that person that was actually going door to door and doing weird stuff to try and get people's attention. I went up to one of my neighbors and she had a painting on her door. And saw like in sales, you're supposed to compliment people before you sell to them. And I was like 12. So I was like, your painting is so beautiful. When I like knocked on the door and she's like, are you here to buy it? And and I just think back to those like cringy memories because I think they really mean something. Like I was so unafraid to put myself out there. And then I wrote down in my journal when I think I was 21 at the time. I had just graduated college and I was like, by 25, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I wrote that down in my journal. And then I ended up being an entrepreneur completely full time like 4 months later. So my timeline was extremely accelerated. But I knew I was going to like put in my time in the real world with real jobs. And then ultimately I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And if I could say anything to anyone who's in that phase of life is like, don't wait. Like if you have an idea, like literally just start.
I resonate also too with the elementary school like entrepreneurial spirit, and I've never considered it actually up until recently. Like someone had asked me what was my earliest memory of that, and I think I had like a lemonade stand a couple of times, which is
Mhm.
fun. But there was for 4th and 5th graders, we were able to work without supervision, at a bookstore. And it was open for an hour, like, before school started, and it was, like, to buy pens and pencils, and it was specifically for, like, the older kids, and I desperately wanted to do that. I remember how fun
Yeah.
that was. But also too, like, I think I liked office supplies in a way. Like, I liked, like, fresh new pens and colored pencils
Yes,
and
me
notepads.
too. I will start
Yeah.
a stationery store. I see it. I'm like 70 years old. I'm like in a small town. I don't travel anymore and I have a brick and mortar store. Like it's happening.
It's so fun. I so Side note, I actually worked at Office Depot. That was one
No
of my
way.
jobs.
That would actually be my dream.
And that was like in the era when like we were still burning CDs and like you can buy a whole case of like 50 blank CDs for I don't know, $10 and like then I was buying fresh markers for like to mark all my, mixed CDs I was making and oh, my sister's a teacher too and she absolutely loves office supplies. We both worked there and that was my favorite thing. It was like clearance office supplies. I literally just loaded. I'm sure I have like pencil cups and sills also from
I
working there.
love that.
It was a cool job, especially if you like office supplies for sure. When it comes to then your business then with starting, being a freelancer, putting yourself out there in Facebook groups and just pitching yourself to everyone. You mentioned on your site and just seeing this information about you, it's you scaled the $5,000 months. You had success pretty quickly, hitting like certain milestones that people usually it takes a while for people to hit. How, I guess like walk me through that. Like what's your thought process on why you scaled so quickly or why were you able to scale so quickly?
For sure. Yeah. My mom was like, you'll figure it out. My dad is the numbers person in our family. And he was like, look, if you can make money, you don't have to apply for jobs. So I gave myself this deadline. I had a job offer waiting for me for a full time role for $60,000 a year. So I was like, okay, that's 5K months. So I'm like, I need to hit $5,000 months. If I can do that consistently within 90 days, then I'm going to tell them no and I'm going to full time pursue this. So I just like worked so hard. When I say I locked myself in my childhood bedroom and worked 18-hour days, like that's what I did. I was up till 3 in the morning. I was scouring Facebook groups. I was just trying to find people who would hire me for literally anything. And I was scrappy. I just hustled and I was selling. I think I was writing sites for like $1,500 each. So when I would sign someone, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. Because I was just this college student and that felt so high ticket. So I think I'm a kind of person where like if I want something, like it happens and I take action. I don't believe in making any sort of excuses. I think everything really falls on my shoulders. And if I work hard enough, then I can make it happen. And I think it was this intense mindset that I was holding. And also I would go for nature walks every day and like visualize the life I wanted. And it almost just became mine because I felt it so viscerally in my body. And I just knew like there was no other option.
That's manifesting to its core.
Yeah,
That's like literally manifestation.
exactly.
And that's such a good way to put it too, because I, for the longest time, I like avoided manifestation. I was just like,
You're like, not
this
for
is
me.
too woo. This is not for me. And again, kind of like yourself, it's like, I know that if I put in the work and I work really hard and I hustle, like I'm going to make the money. But then like there is that element and I'm glad that you added that to I would go for nature walks and visualize what I wanted because that's what keeps you going when you're staying up late at night, when you're pitching yourself, when you're scouring Facebook groups and you're not finding any job postings. Like that is what keeps you going is like the dream or like the vision that you hold for yourself. And I think when people think of manifestation and they might be new to it, that's not what they're thinking of. It can be as simple as going for a walk in nature and just like literally visualization. That's my favorite thing to do.
And I think people often get it a little bit wrong with the idea of manifestation and visualization, that it's this really soft process where you're just like, oh, this is what I want and it's going to fall in my lap. And hustle is seen as this really like white knuckled, like bad thing. And I was working these 18-hour days and I was loving it. Like every time I signed a new client, like the dopamine coursing through my veins of like, I did it, like I got it. So I think it can be a wonderful, flowy, joyful, long work day. Not once was I like, I hate my life. Like I was building my dream life and I had so much fun throughout that process.
What do you think differs between you and the willingness to keep doing that day in and day out, right? Because why isn't everyone else doing that? It's simple, right? And when you put it into words, it's simple to sign into social media, pitch yourself, look for leads every single day. It is simple. That is on paper, that is a tangible thing everyone can do. Why do you think that you did that and succeeded at that versus why aren't other people doing that?
Yeah, I think a lot of A lot of people don't know themselves as an entrepreneur, and it's one thing to keep working. It's another thing to keep doing things that are working again and again. I think if you're just putting in time and nothing's working, you're going to get so demoralized that you're going to hate opening up your laptop. For me, I knew I was really good at sales because I was a sales copywriter. So I knew how to sign clients. I knew how to get them really strong copy. The things I was horrible at was things like graphic design, operations. So as soon as I had a little bit of money, I was like, cool, I'm going to get a VA, or I'm going to hire a brand designer, or I'm going to have someone make me a gorgeous website. And I would just shell out money. Like I was already a 7-figure entrepreneur because I know that's what it takes. I was never afraid of investing in myself, and I was never afraid of letting my weaknesses get taken care of by other people while I poured everything I had into my strengths.
Ooh, I love that quote. That is a quote. You were never afraid to outsource your weaknesses. I love that. I love that so much. And that's another thing that people I think get hung up on, or I know that at least in the beginning of my business too, I felt like I needed to know everything.
Yeah.
And that's really what, like, holds people back from just, like you kinda just, like, went for it. Like, you literally just went for it. Where do you think you how you started that answer was you people don't know themselves as an entrepreneur, and that's completely true, but how did you find yourself in that way? Like, and you found it rather quickly.
I think I'm just in love with efficiency. When things aren't working, I don't think I have a very big ego. I think if someone challenges me or something's not working, I'm pretty flexible in that I'm like, okay, that needs to leave. We need to try something else. And I don't get attached to things that look good on paper, but no one's actually buying them. I love proof. Like when there's proof, when there's momentum, I'm there, I'm following it. So I think that's a big thing of why I was able to know myself so quickly because I was able to very clearly see, oh, when I went on this podcast and pitched my services at the end, 6 people booked with me, but I'm trying to like make a name for myself on Clubhouse and I'm bored out of my mind and have signed no clients. Therefore, I'm going to delete my Clubhouse account and go all in on podcast guesting. And I think it's just making those really decisive decisions based on your intuition, but also based on what the data is telling you.
Yeah. We, for whatever reason, forget to track data. That at least
Yeah,
that is a hang up for a lot of my clients. I love that's where I live and breathe is I love the numbers and KPIs and metrics and tracking. And that's something that I have a strong, just like really like a stronghold on and want to coach people and just like hammer that into people's heads. Like you have to follow the data. And so one thing though that I want to switch to not talking about data is something that you mentioned, I think also on your site is a business succeeds because of its strong personality and not despite it. And how does that guide you not only in your business, but I think like hiring, messaging, and the client strategy?
for sure. I think when it comes to, especially women, I'm sure a lot of us have come from places where we needed to sit down, be less loud, be less polarizing, be less whatever. And I realized after getting fired, I'm like, okay, the worst thing that can happen to someone's career literally happened to me at my first job. Like we can only go up from here. So I brought that boldness to my business and just decided I'm going to speak like me. I'm going to be casual. I'm going to be kind of cringe on Instagram. At the time, not a lot of copywriters were putting themselves out there with their face, and Reels had just gotten popular. So I was able to go viral on Reels a lot, and I was able to grow my Instagram relatively quickly simply by just doing lip syncing videos because the algorithm was amazing in 2021. So I think it's just that it's a matter of just really knowing again who you are, your personality, and then not being afraid to like rip the veil off and being like, look, this is me. Like I'm chaotic, but I'll make you money.
I love that. I love that so much too. That's just like these are like so amazing quotes. Like I'm chaotic, but I'm gonna make you money.
That'll be my
Let's
merch
go.
after this podcast episode.
Oh my god, that's such a good idea. But, I think you bring up a good point too, and I actually had another conversation with someone earlier today about this. We were talking about high-performing women, and especially with like, that typically is probably who you work with, right? You're working with women entrepreneurs, business owners, and people who don't want to talk about themselves. And again, to your point, yes, we've been told to shrink or sit down or be quiet or fit into a box at some point. I know that I have.
Yeah.
And it's been if we have these desires and these dreams and we're talking about them and the people nearest and dearest to us, they are triggered in some way, and then we have to shrink to make them more comfortable. So I love that you said that about it really is just like owning your own not expertise, your secret sauce. Like, who are you, your personality? Let's get to know you. That can go into like personal branding and how important that is too. And that's how you can kind of build trust, and that's how you stand out, and that's how you can really just be like almost the thought leader in your industry.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. I think it's going to be really hard if you're in a room that's scared of you being big. You're going to want to be small to fit in that room. You have to change the room. I feel really fortunate that I have such a great business support network where they would literally reach out to me if I put out something vanilla on Instagram, and they'd be like, "Who hurt you?" Because, they just have this expectation of me being this fully expressed woman, and they encourage me to go further and reach higher. And I think if you're someone who's struggling with stepping into your personality, do something that's outside of your personality in your personal life, like go eat alone, or just do something that kind of scares you and start showing yourself that you can do things scared and it's fine. And everyone has the attention span of a goldfish and no one's going to care.
Everyone's so worried about their own posts, right? Everyone's so
Yeah.
worried about their own posts and how people are going to receive their own things. But that's something that I definitely had to learn too. I forget who said it. It was definitely someone, either one of my mentors or just maybe I saw it on social media. But it was like, if you hesitate before hitting the post button, like say you wrote something opinionated and you hesitate, that means you should post it. And so, like,
Yeah.
that's always been a guiding light for me whenever I craft something or want to say something. And either I hesitate before I post, or then I post it and then I'm like, "Ooh, I don't know how I feel about that." And I have this, like, feeling at the pit of my stomach, but I'm like, "Okay, no. This is gonna be a good post." Like, or this is gonna be a good
Yeah.
piece of content. And I try to tell people that too. It's like the more uncomfortable you get, you don't have to, like, be polarizing or offensive or anything like that, but the more uncomfortable you get, you actually build confidence in yourself as well. And the confidence to be that thought leader, and it becomes easier to share your opinions. And again, like, your opinions aren't bad. Like, we need people to differentiate from the norm, and again, like the vanilla content that we see all the time.
Absolutely. And I think one thing you can do is like all of us have been through hard stuff in our life. So like you can think of something that you did that was hard. For me, I always go back to bungee jumping. I bungee jumped when I was like 20. And so this is how much I shouldn't be an engineer. I thought when you bungee jump, it's like skydiving and you just like feel like you're floating and you don't even feel the dropping feeling. So when I jumped off the bridge, I was horrified because that was the most intense dropping feeling I've ever felt in my life. I was like shaking after. I was like, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" And then everything in my life, I told myself, like, well, at least I'm not bungee jumping today. So it's like we all have that thing, like whether it's that thing you got out of that was really hard to get out of, that job that you like defeated all the odds and like rose up to the position. Like, what is that thing that proves to you, like, I'm really strong? Because that's your reminder when things are really intense or you're scared of your messaging or anything like that. You can just go back to it and be like, well, I did that, so I can do this.
Yeah, it's so empowering to start doing that too. It really is. But again, I think that comes from, like, if we want to go through like the mindset of it, I know that I'm also naive in that way. Like how you just described bungee jumping and how, like, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna do
Yeah,
it.
it's
Like,
gonna be fine.
right. And I think that's how there's certain things like, okay, starting a business, right? Like, I'm fine to just jump in as well. And I've learned as I've gone on and throughout the years. And that's really how I do anything that I'm passionate about. Like, I'm not the person to kind of sit back and like, ooh, it needs to be perfect. I need to know everything before I commit. Like, I kind of just like go for it. Kind of like this podcast. I just started
I
recording
love that.
and
Now you have a
whatever.
podcast.
Now I have a podcast.
Weird how that works.
Right, right. But it's okay to make mistakes along the way too. Like, obviously your mistake was, "Oh, I actually feel awful like right now. Like, I didn't know this." But at the same time you did it, right? You did it and
Yeah.
you experienced it, and there isn't like a failure or a win. Like, it's just the experience and the lesson that you learned. And I think for me, like there's a lot of times where I've done things like that too. It's like the more naive I am, I'm fine with that. I also equate that to how I entered motherhood. So I have a daughter, she's 2. She's a little over 2. And I have a ton of friends who have kids, multiple children at this point. My sister, who I'm really close with, has a child. Yes, I've asked her some questions, but I was definitely never the person to be like, "What'd you do for here? This. I need all these things." I wanted to go through it on my own and just like navigate my own like thing, right? Like I
Yeah,
want, and again, like I was naive. Like and I'm still naive. Like as a toddler, I don't know certain things, like because I'm not looking it up to be perfect and be the perfect parent and have her be the smartest or that kind of thing. Like I'm just kind of not winging it, but I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna take her lead. I'm kind of gonna like be intuitive about it too, like
absolutely.
and I think that that's a huge thing when it comes to then in the world of content creation. So circling back to content creation, we get so inundated with what is going to do well and what's going to get us the most engagement and how we need to craft the perfect post that we also then lose ourselves in that. And when you are just naive and not paying attention to the algorithm and then you're just paying attention to what you feel is right or wrong or whatever, I think that's when the magic can really happen.
For sure. I think one thing I often will tell people is I wasn't really investing in coaching until I was already at multi six figures. I had no interest in other people's opinions in my business because I needed to find product market fit and I needed to make sure things were working and then I would get help scaling. And I think that might be a little bit of a hot take in the online space. I was investing in courses in how to create better reels or how to design your ClickUp. I was doing skill specific, but when it comes to more general business coaching and containers, just wasn't really interested in seeing how other people were doing things until I was really solid in how I wanted to do things.
Love that stance. And you're right. I think that is not common, where I think we are told that we need a business coach a lot of times, all of the time. And I think that that's when you run into, again, you're going to lose yourself because you are listening to whatever anyone else thinks that you should be doing, but also the willingness to just be scrappy, like you
Hmm.
mentioned. And if I look back to I remember there was a period in time where I just went a year without mentorship. It was the very beginning of my business. And that was the best time I had to really get clear. And then when I then did hire another mentor again, I had again the confidence to be like, I can listen to this mentor, but I don't need to do everything that she says. I can put it through my own filter and still she's here to help me, not to do it for me. And that's the difference. And so I love that you took that approach. And I love that you shared that because I think you have to hire specifics, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not always, I need someone to help me in my business. I get inquiries a lot where I just need you to help me make money. I'm like, okay, but how do you want to do that?
Hmm.
Do you need me to help you with product suite? Do you need me to help you craft marketing strategy? You need to be specific because this is never going to work if I'm not a generalist. I
Right.
can help you with your marketing, can help you with lead generation, but I can't help you do a million different things. You're also not going to succeed very well at
Yeah.
doing a million different things. So I love that you shared that. You also too, I've seen a lot of things where you talk about unicorn brands. How would you define a unicorn brand?
Yeah. So a unicorn brand I see as a brand that is owning their category and people are so inspired by them. They look up to them. They're almost the poster child of their industry, but nobody can replicate them. And I came up with unicorn brands. That's my podcast, actually, Unicorn Messaging, because I think my toxic trait is I just don't think things apply to me. Anytime I'm anywhere and someone pulls out a framework, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to fit that framework. So I wanted to create a space because I don't believe that the best businesses can have a messaging framework because we have to create messaging that's never been heard before if they want to become a business that nobody's ever seen before. So that's why I created my membership, Unicorn Messaging, which is an extension of my podcast to create those unicorn brands. Because at the end of the day, why would we want to be another good web designer or even great system specialist? I want to own a category where someone says no one can do X like her. And I want that for my clients too.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Where I struggle with a lot of like the marketing out there that is I can help you scale to 20K months, but there's no like rhyme or reason behind it. And then they just want you to do it like how they did it.
For sure. Like a
And
copy and paste.
yeah, or business in a box type thing and swipe files and templates and scripts. Like I'm also anti all of those things where again, very early on in my business, like I thought that was the way. And then like quickly understanding that, oh, wait, no, I think differently and I do things differently. And not only understanding and coming to that like notion, but then also to like finally owning that, like finally owning my own path and like the way I do things too. And I think that's, again, that's where the success happens, like clearly
Yeah.
when you just truly take the path that's not the beaten path. Like you go down it's scary sometimes because like, no one has done it before you,
Yeah.
but that just means you have to do it,
For
truly.
sure. Yeah, you just have to take the plunge and like realize like your creativity is still a differentiator and there's no amount of templates that are going to get you into a business because if it's templated it means someone's done it before and therefore you're no longer an original.
I know that I've had clients also that, when we're talking about marketing strategy and copy and things like that, a big thing that we talk about is storytelling. I love storytelling content. I have a lot of stories to share about things that I've been involved with in my life and things that I've gone through. And so I do share a lot of the things that I've gone through. So when I do have clients that maybe don't have these huge stories, traumatic stories, turning points even, how do you bring out those, I guess, moments from clients?
If someone tells me they don't have a story, I will come to their house and I will sit on their couch for 4 hours and I will be like, "Tell me your life story," because I don't believe it. Like no one gets out of life unscathed. No one has this really boring life. Some people just tell their life in a boring way. And that's not an ad, but it's just basically saying like you can choose the way your narrative is scripted. So, okay, maybe you don't have this traumatic story where you were like crying at a bus stop over your horrible boss and then you got hit by the bus and then you had to go to the hospital. And then you're like, I'm going to be a graphic designer. Like some people do have stories like that, not everyone. But I guarantee there was a turning point in your mind where you're like, this cannot be the status quo and I'm going to be the one who fixes it. And that's what I try and get out of my clients. It can be something as simple as I was looking at all these graphic designers creating these like nude, beige, boring, minimalist graphics. And I decided I wanted things to be an explosion on the computer screen. So I developed my own maximalist style that I'm known for. So it can be anything. And it can also be micro moments. Like one of the posts I put out a couple weeks ago was why this story about me buying tram tickets is going to be the reason you hire me for a messaging intensive. And I basically just went through how my brain works in a completely unrelated context. So there's stories that are constantly in your life. They're micro stories for content or they're macro stories that actually paint your about page.
I know going back to when I was starting my business, like it does take practice to recognize that. Because now I catch myself daily, like, oh, this is gonna be a good post. Oh, that
Totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
I'm
it's
like,
so
oh, wow, I'm so glad that person was so mean to me. Like, that's going to make
yes.
such a good carousel.
And multiple carousels at that, and multiple reels at that, and multiple just like thought processes. It's so, yeah. So now, even when I'm just like driving home from the gym, I have moments of inspiration and then I just like my brain spirals. But I do think it does take practice. It's a muscle to get there. And I think there's just like how you said, like there is a turning point and then understanding how you can relay that back to like how it's relevant to your business or then how it's relevant to your ideal clients. And like that was something I struggled with too because I knew I had a story. And so like this is the opposite. I had the opposite effect. I have a lot of stories. Like I'm a cancer survivor. My parents passed away when I was young. And so like a lot of those things happening made me become an entrepreneur and not pursue like finance, crazy,
Hmm.
stressful environments.
Yeah.
And so for me, and I did work with a copywriter 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm like, how do I apply all of these stories, like rather than just sharing like I'm a cancer survivor and I'm blah 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 blah, is how do I intertwine this into my brand and my copy and all that stuff? So I actually had too much that I didn't know what to do with. And I think also too, so like I would love to know your thoughts on that of like there's there's a way to tell your story too. Like of course you can share your story in whatever medium you want and talk about it, but in the sense of, like, intertwining that into your brand story, I know for me, there's a way that I like to tell my story, not just, like, blab and vent and be kind of, like, chaotic about it. I wanna do it in a structured way where then people can also get lessons out of it. And so how do you help someone, like, kind of juggle all of those things?
I think it's a multifaceted thing. The first thing is making sure a story is relevant. I think it's so easy to want to tell people, like, look what happened to me at the grocery store. Like, this sucks. But if it doesn't relate to your brand message, it should probably be something you just say to your friend on a phone call. I think the second thing is also making sure you're telling stories in your brand voice. So the way I tell stories is I love humor. I love like kind of a dry sass. So I'll often put that in my stories. I'll use a lot of sensory details. I like to kind of pull people in with me. I also write fiction, so I think that's kind of intertwined into that. But for someone, it might be a matter of telling a story almost more like a case study because they have a more authoritative brand. So it's knowing how you're going to tell stories and making it be in line with your brand voice. And I think the last one is just ask yourself, like, would I want to read this story? Think about being at a dinner party and you're talking to someone and they're bad at telling stories. It's usually because they're telling you all these details about people you don't know, places you don't know, like their dream last night. And you're like, I just literally want to leave. But the person where you're just in it with them is the person who starts with the punchline and it makes you want to know more. So you just want to do that in your own stories too. You start with a hook. You say, like, of course, I can't think of any examples. You start with the hook of, I didn't take my trash out for 600 days. And people would be like, oh my gosh, why didn't they take their trash out for 600 days? And now they want to swipe. Now they want to go into the story. But if you just said, like, yeah, I was having like some thoughts about the environment and I was thinking, how do I want to go about the environment? And then my aunt Lisa like doesn't even recycle. And then you're like, what? I don't care. So it's like, think about those oral storytelling skills that you see and you don't see when you're in a group of people, and then you can employ those in your writing.
Exactly that. I was literally being taken back to a scenario of, like, being at a dinner party and,
We all
like
have it.
yeah, yeah, and, like, just listening to someone ramble on about but it almost also too, like, the example I thought of is, like, bragging. Like, yes, brag on yourself, but there's a way of, like you can tell when someone just wants to tell a story because they want you to hear their story, and it doesn't apply or I'm not gonna get anything out of it, and so I think, like, that also too can be a slippery slope when it comes to writing your content too, of, like, there is a way to celebrate and to also apply to your business, your brand voice. So, yeah, I was thinking of a very uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, no,
That was a
people
good
often
visual.
will tell me, they're like, I don't know how you can deliver such harsh truths and it's still nice. And I mean, that's the magic, that's the nuance, and that's what good copy has, is it really takes people in and gives them this complex emotion of interacting with you, where of course you're bragging. We're business owners. Like if you're not bragging, then they're going to hire someone else. But it's how can you brag in a way that makes you a sympathetic character? So I think Sabrina Carpenter does a really good job of this. Like she can totally just shame men, but she does it in this like playful, cheeky way. And the way I bring that up is your brand voice should be multifaceted. So if you're a really direct person, you're going to need undercurrents of empathy in there, or else it's going to come across as kind of mean.
That was something I've actually it's funny that you bring up the word direct. That has been a word that has been used to describe me, like, this year, and exactly to that point is I would never think or feel that I'm a direct person. But it's exactly how you just described it, because I've asked people, I'm like, "See, whenever I've heard someone be described as direct, I have, like, this negative connotation that it does mean rude and blunt." Like, that's how I've always associated with it. But literally, I hosted a workshop and I was going through my brand story and I was doing a workshop on brand and I'm like, "Would you guys think that I'm more direct or indirect?" And, like, the whole room of, like, 50 people raised their hand, like, shot it up, like, "You're direct." I'm like, "Okay." Like, I was taken aback with it, but I think it's because, then in the other breath is that I am laid back and relaxed. But so I get it. I understand it. I'm trying to come around on it and understand it for my own business, but, like, I think it just means, like, yes, I'm no fluff, like, but I don't say it in a punchy way. So it's funny that you brought that up because that is a word I've been really trying to, like, have a better relationship with because I
Yeah.
get it, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
You can be direct and soft. Like my grandpa, if he, I'm going somewhere with this, if he was thirsty, he would tell a story about being in the desert 20 years ago. And you were supposed to extrapolate that that meant he wants you to get up and get him a glass of water. That is indirect. And direct would just be like, hey, can I have a glass of water? I'm thirsty and you're already standing. So I don't think direct has to be rude, or it's definitely not blunt. I mean, those are two separate words on my form. My clients who are blunt are very different than my clients who are direct. It just means you spit it out, you say it, you create a lot of space for people to figure it out for themselves. You just kind of get in there.
I have a few other questions to ask
Yeah.
you. One thing that a word that pops up is like underestimated. Do you still feel underestimated?
Don't anymore. I definitely used to. I sometimes think that's why I specialized in successful women in their 20s and 30s early on in my career. Now it's kind of expanded. I work with the occasional man. And I think it's because I was working with these men and they were just like, oh, what do you know? You're like 21-year-old writer. And I could have like faced those beliefs, but instead I was like, I just want you out of my life. So I just niched down. But now I feel really embodied with my brand. I feel really confident in my work. And I feel like I'm getting recognized really well for it. I'm being asked to speak at different events around the country. So, all of those things, I definitely don't feel like the underestimated little college grad that I was. I feel really comfortable in my space and in my skin.
When do you think that shifted for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it shifted after I worked with an executive coach. I'm such a believer in working with coaches for non-business things and like really getting your insides. I sound like I'm talking about your organs, like your insides in check because you can really sabotage a good business with a bad mindset. And if you don't have the tools that you need to be the CEO of your business, you're going to constantly just be an employee who's unregulated. You don't have a boss and you're constantly trying to do all the things for your clients and you won't have your grounded center. So I highly recommend doing that harder, deeper mindset work of like, where am I holding myself back and just taking that radical responsibility for your results.
What are some words that you live by?
I believe through action comes clarity. I don't believe it's the other way around. I think if you just move and do something and shift the energy and see what happens, you're going to get a lot better results than if you sit there with a pencil and paper and make this perfect plan.
Is a brand voice pet peeve that you have?
Probably when brands are one dimensional. So when someone's like, my brand voice is kind, empathetic, and nice. And I'm like, wow, you're probably the most boring person I've ever met if I met your brand at a dinner party. I think brand voices absolutely need to have some dissonance. So if you're going to be provocative, then adding in like empathy and humor to soften the provocativeness, that will give you like a really great, well rounded brand voice.
Yeah, multidimensional for sure. And then the last question is what do you hope or what are some final words that you want someone to walk away from listening to you today?
I hope I'm almost like a permission slip. I know I probably shared a lot of things, some things that you might think are wonderful, and other things that make you think, I don't know if I want to ever meet her in person. She seems kind of scary. So take what you wish, but just know that, if you own your belief system, if you own the things you're trying to say, you will be so much more noticed online than if you always try and toy this perfect little middle because there's no middle. There's just like bland and then like off person that people like.
I love that. And we'll close with that. Tell us where we can connect with you if we aren't too scared to meet you.
If you want to actually meet me, the best thing to do is send me a DM on Instagram at my right hand woman, right spelled like writing. If you listen to the episode, just tell me maybe a takeaway that you have or something you want to explore with me in voice notes. We can totally chat. If you don't want to interact with me, I am obsessed with my website. I just got it redesigned. It's myrighthandwoman.com. It's very interactive. So head on over there and have a little fun for 10 minutes. And then if you liked hearing me talk, then I also have my own podcast. It's on Spotify and Apple, and I guess anywhere else a podcast is. It's called Unicorn Messaging, and it's a mixture of mindset and messaging tips to really up level into that unicorn status. If you heard that part of this episode and were thinking, well, I want to be a category of one.
And you mentioned that you have a membership as well.
I do. Yes. So yeah, go
Share
ahead.
share about your membership.
Yeah, so my membership is something so new. I just launched it a couple weeks ago, and it's for the business owner that wants to write their own copy. They don't want to outsource to a copywriter to do it all for them, which is totally cool. But they want that person in their back pocket to review their things, to tell them this is what I would shift, this is how I'd rewrite that headline, and also have a group of women who are coming together, writing copy and creating what they need to get those identity upgrades that also match the messaging upgrades that we're making. It contains 2 live calls a month and also 2 bite-sized trainings where I encourage you to go so much deeper into your messaging to get radically different results.
Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more. And yeah, please, everyone, just please go and connect with Lucy because I know a lot of people who are going to be listening to this. They need help with their content, writing, messaging, telling their stories. That just seems to be a huge pain point for a lot of people that I at least know. So thank you so much for being
Of
here.
course. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Business Over Cocktails, where real stories and bold business moves come to life. If this episode lit something up in you, share it with a friend, tag me at Lauren Najar or the podcast page at Business Over Cocktails. Make sure to leave a quick review as well. It helps more than you know. Until next time, keep chasing what matters and building the business that feels like you. Cheers!